Welcome to the Cooking Chat Food and Wine Podcast. Today we are launching a new series that we are calling Virtual Winery Visits. In these episodes, we'll talk with winemakers and winery owners about their vineyards, the regions they come from, and the wines that they produce. The idea is to give listeners a sense of what it's like to visit these wineries while also sharing ideas for pairing their wines with food at home. Today, we're heading to Washington's Yakima Valley for a virtual visit to Dineen Family Vineyards, where I'm joined by second generation owner and vintner, Marissa Dineen. Hello, Marissa. Welcome to the Cooking Chat podcast.
Hello, David. Delighted to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Been looking forward to this, and I've been enjoying your wines for several years since we had a conversation sort of a little bit like this many years ago when I first was introduced to your winery. So it's kind of coming full circle a little here today.
Delighted, and always happy to have people who continue to enjoy our wines. That's
Great.
a good sign.
Yes, definitely. So why don't we start? I am, of course, as I said, have gotten familiar with your wines, but many listeners are probably new to it. So if you could start with me, just a brief intro, maybe 2 minutes or so about the winery, and then we'll circle back and go deeper on different aspects of it with some of my follow-up questions. But just a minute or two about Dineen Vineyards for people who've never heard of it.
Wonderful. So we are Dineen Family Vineyards. We are located in the Yakima Valley of Washington State. And in fact, in an even smaller sub-region we call the Hills, which is a little what it says. So we're
Hmm,
at elevation. We are amongst a very small handful of wineries in Washington, less than 10%, who actually own their own vineyards.
hmm.
And we're of an even smaller group that makes wine exclusively from those grapes. And so, by way of background, we have about 100 acres under vine. We specialize in the noble grapes coming from Bordeaux and the Rhône valleys in France. And our motto is that we do the classics well. So we really aim to just express our unique site and region and give consumers something delightful in their glass that they can enjoy with loved ones.
That's great. Oh, sorry.
That's it. That's it.
That's great. No, that's a nice succinct start to the introduction. That was interesting. That's helpful to distinguish this. I don't know where Washington is probably in the top five or so of states producing wine, but it sounds like you've got a unique niche within Washington wine from what you said there.
Indeed. And in fact, Washington is number two.
Number two, I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have probably guessed three or four, maybe.
Yeah, so we're number two, so just behind California. And I believe from an agriculture perspective, we're also number two.
Hmm.
So agriculture is near and dear to the hearts of Washingtonians, which is kind of funny because most people associate us with the likes of Microsoft and
Yeah,
Boeing and Costco and Starbucks and things like
right.
that. But no, agriculture is a huge part of our GDP.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. So we're calling this series that we're actually just starting with you here today, virtual winery visits. So, we're trying to simulate a little bit for the listeners what it would be like to visit you at Dineen Family Vineyard. So if I pulled up to check out the winery and do some tasting on a nice sunny day, what would I see? What's the landscape like? What would I be looking at? To paint a picture.
Well, great. So, as I mentioned, we're in the hills. And so, with hills comes beautiful views.
Hmm.
So, you look out over our vines as they descend into the valley, Yakima Valley, that is. And it's framed by two mountains. One is Mount Rainier, which Washington is pretty
Oh,
famous
yeah,
for.
sure.
And the one that's even closer is Mount Adams, which is also just a stunning peak and this time of year covered in snow.
Hmm.
In fact, most times of year covered in snow. And then we're surrounded by foothills. So it's really
Hmm.
quite beautiful. And so visitors are really next to the vines. And so that's a
Yeah.
special thing about visiting us is you can actually walk up to the vines and see what's happening that time of year.
Yeah.
And on site, we also have our winery. So our
Hmm.
winery, and we'll touch on this too, I think today, our
Yeah.
winery is in the shape of a dairy barn,
Oh,
and
okay.
our tasting room has similar architecture. And so you just feel like you're really in the countryside and you can breathe. You have fresh air. It's wonderful.
That
And of
sounds
course,
great.
wine tastes better al fresco, I like to say.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That sounds like a great setting. So how did it all come about? Tell us a little bit of the founding story of Dineen Family Vineyards.
Well, absolutely. So I'm going to go back a few decades. So my father, who was our founder, Pat Dineen, he grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin.
Hmm.
Thus the shape of the winery
Ah,
being dairy.
okay. I see where that's going.
Yes, and as you can imagine, dairy farming is, it's a daily chore. So you're milking the cows every day. So as he approached college, he said, "Hey, I want to do something different."
Hmm.
So he went to Marquette University in Milwaukee and graduated there, joined the Air Force,
Hmm.
and left that farming life behind.
Yeah.
So all the smelly cows in early mornings and cold winter days.
Yeah.
And in his Air Force days, he passed through Colorado, which is where he met my mother. And then
Hmm.
ultimately, they came to Seattle when he left the Air Force, and he started a career in banking
Hmm.
and did that for, gosh, close to 40 years.
Wow.
Um, and all throughout that, coming back to the beginning of our conversation, Washington has a huge agricultural business. And so he did a lot of work lending money to big farmers.
Yeah.
And so as he was nearing his retirement, he was kind of yearning for that agricultural lifestyle, not the cows,
Yeah.
but
No cows. I like that. Yeah.
and throughout their lives, my parents really enjoyed travel. They're
Hmm.
very social, family oriented, community oriented, um, and loved food and wine. And
Yeah.
so it just kind of made sense to plant a vineyard,
Yeah.
funnily enough. And so mom and dad looked down in Napa, California, Northern California area. They looked in Walla Walla in Washington. My
Hmm.
sister went to college there, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
that was of interest to them. But ultimately settled on our little hillside site in the Yakima Valley for a couple reasons. One is it's the historic tree fruit growing region of Washington
Okay.
State.
Yeah.
And the reason it's historic is that it is naturally great for growing exceptional fruit. So we get tons
Hmm.
of sun, we get a lot of airflow, which is great for preventing freeze,
Right.
which grapevines do not like. And it also, not only do we get the fruit ripe with the sun, but because we're at elevation and get a lot of airflow, we get cool nights,
Hmm.
and that just creates freshness in the fruit. So you don't want to bite into, a kind of mealy apple. You want one that's crisp and fresh. And the same
Right.
thing is true for cherries and apricots and nectarines and such, and also true for wine grapes.
Yeah. Great.
And so that's kind of the history.
Hmm.
And then, roll forward 20 years. I mean, this is our 25th year of growing. We call it the
Oh, wow.
25th leaf. And I really entered the business side 5 years ago, 6 years
Hmm.
ago now. And so I'm the next generation. And with me starting, I was really committed to growing our wine making and wine selling side of the business. And so
Hmm.
here we are today, tasting some wine.
Wonderful. Yeah. Did you ex Now let's see. So doing the math there. So did you have a sense you might return to the business? So it sounds like the business was going for a couple decades before you jumped in or got in with both feet here.
Well, truth be told, when mom and dad started this whole adventure, it was not on my radar whatsoever, but
Yeah.
I enjoyed coming back and just seeing what was happening because it's always changing. And then I think you and I have chatted a little bit about this. I was fortunate enough to work in Europe for many years and
Hmm.
tour a lot of wine regions there. And when I was working in Europe, I was in financial services. And, around 2010, that was not so much fun any longer.
Oh, right.
And I took the opportunity to kind of shift and I went back to school. We've got Washington State University has a wonderful viticulture and enology program. So I was
Oh, yeah.
able to do that remotely while still
Nice.
living in Europe. And voila, here we are.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And it definitely seems like you're pleased with the choice. You see, I always seem enthusiastic about it when I've anytime I've chatted with you.
It is. It's a fun business. We make people happy
Yeah, that's a good business to be in for sure. I mean,
for
you've
sure.
touched upon this a little bit, but if you want to elaborate on sort of how you would describe Dineen's approach to winemaking and the wines that you produce.
Yeah, so, I talked about the fact that we specialize in the noble varieties of Bordeaux and
Hmm.
Rhône. And so our kind of overarching ethos is do the classics well.
Hmm.
So, we don't have too many what we call sport varieties.
Yeah.
So varieties that consumers might not know. But what we really try to do is to take wonderful fruit. So we invest a lot in our farming and then use just very traditional winemaking techniques to create something that expresses the varietal well, but
Hmm.
also our sense of place.
Yep.
And that's really what we do. And so we've got wines that are traditional, but they actually have a unique twist to them because of where they're grown.
Hmm.
And we really want to do them to have lovely, lovely mouthfeel on the palate and flavor.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, and in a few minutes we'll get to actually taste some of that flavor. But before that, just a little more context. So, is that typical? Because I did want to, part of this, I know like my geography and learning about places and getting there in person is better, but this virtual visit, we want to get a sense of Yakima Valley. Is the focus on the noble varieties pretty common there, or are people doing a bunch of, I don't know, a bunch of different things, or does it really
Uh,
make sense to lean into the kind of grapes you're growing?
yeah, I think unfortunately, I'm involved with our Growers Association, so I know quite a bit of
Yeah.
this. The main, the most prolific varieties that we grow in our region are Cabernet Sauvignon,
Hmm.
Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Syrah, and Riesling.
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
Followed by, like, I would call it aromatic whites, other
Hmm.
aromatic whites. So it is very common to have the core of those classic varieties.
Yeah.
However, we are able to grow almost anything. So we have a
Hmm.
lot of different varieties growing at our neighbors too. I mean, we have like 2 acres of Tempranillo on our site,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
coming from a completely different region of Europe.
Right.
We have neighbors who grow only Portuguese varieties.
Yeah.
um, we have a neighbor who grows Saperavi, which is a
Oh,
variety coming from
interesting.
Georgia.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, coming back to the beginning of our conversation about the attractiveness of our region for wine grapes. It
Hmm.
can really produce all sorts of different varieties well, which is
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. And you said some of the key factors, it's pretty dry, cool nights. What's the soil like there?
Well, I like to call it lasagna because we have a
Okay.
few different components.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, we're on a different geological formation than the majority of Washington.
Hmm.
So when people talk about the Columbia Valley of Washington, they often talk about the Missoula floods, which
Right.
was
Yeah.
a cataclysmic flood that affected most of western Washington and eastern Washington for that matter. Um, but we're on something called the Ellensburg Formation, which
Hmm.
is higher than the floods. So
Oh, okay.
the floods couldn't hit anything that was above, say, 850, 900 feet above sea level.
Hmm.
and we're sitting at 11, 1,200 feet above sea level.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so we get the same silt loam soils that they would get in the Missoula floods, Columbia Valley region, but we also get a lot of ancient river rock. So
Oh,
we have
okay.
tons of little stones in our soils. And then the third component is a hard pan. We call it caliche, but it's basically like a limestone.
Yeah.
And that is, from compression and from oftentimes comes up from the sea.
Yeah.
So it's a super interesting mix of soils and nutrient rich, which is great for the grapes because that's what they eat are the minerals from the soils.
Right. Yeah.
And it gives because we have varied soils, we get a lot of complexity
Hmm.
in the grape varieties and the wines.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a good segue to start tasting some of the wines. Talking about it is great, but it's not like enjoying a glass, right? So
Of course.
I gave you a heads up. There were two bottles I had because in full disclosure, I've been a wine club member for a while, so I had several bottles still on hand from the last shipment. And so the first one we wanted to try for those who are looking at this on video, it's you can see, but for those who can't, it is the Roussanne 2024. So as I get ready, I'm gonna pour a bit in my glass. You want to tell us a little bit about this and
Wonderful. And I've got some here, David.
all
Whoops, it's hard
right,
to screen
virtual.
so but
Yep.
so let me just tell Roussanne is one of the classic varieties coming from the Rhône Valley.
Hmm.
Um, I like to tell a little story about the name. So roux means rust in French. And it's interesting because they're white grapes, but they have kind of a rusty hue when you harvest them, and that's where they
Hmm.
get the name.
Oh,
And
interesting. Hmm.
isn't that it's kind of a fun fact? And what I like about this wine is that I think the aromatics are just delightful. I mean,
Hmm.
the floral notes on it are just beautiful. It's got a lot of freshness. We talked about that from the elevation. We also get the freshness from the soils.
Hmm.
And I just think it's an absolute delight. It's got a beautiful palette, it's full. Yet you're not overwhelmed with the wine, so it pairs super well with food as well. So, I love this with a pasta with a bit of cream sauce or
Oh, yeah, I could see
with
that.
vegetables is delightful and herbs. Like I think
Hmm.
it complements herbs really well or Asian food. It's also just
Oh, okay.
wonderful with lots of different Asian foods.
It's interesting you say that because I was going to throw, part of it as I was planning this, I was thinking about cooking what I was going to cook this weekend. Was actually thinking about a stir fry, like I have a turkey and cabbage stir fry with like some miso kind of as the base. So at first I was like, oh, I don't know if that would work, but actually I'm glad you said the Asian works. So my experiment idea might not be too bad.
Well, and interestingly enough, I think that we talked about floral, but I
Hmm.
think there's some umami notes in this wine
Hmm.
too, which just screams miso to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and just some things you said, I noticed that, yeah, it's got like I got like a little lemon peel on the nose and kind of some of the citrus, but it does I agree with what you're saying that in terms of the complexity of your wines, this I feel like for a white, it's got more going on than a lot of whites. I'm glad I didn't, I think we at least in America, I think tend to serve our whites too cold. I'm glad this is like chilled nicely, but it's not so cold that like the different flavors are and the complexities opening up nicely here.
Well, I agree with you about serving them too cold. And I
Hmm.
would add this wine. The other thing I like about this wine is we do a lot of work on mouthfeel.
Yeah.
And this wine, we vinify it, we do the fermentation in barrel, which people
Oh,
are
okay.
like, oh my goodness, I'm not sure I want an oaky white. But did you
Yeah.
sense any oak on this?
No, I wouldn't have guessed oak. Yeah. I mean, it does have the depth, but yeah, but not
And
not the
that's
oak
really what
flavor.
we're aiming for is that we want to get we use neutral white barrels so that
Okay.
we
Hmm.
get that mouthfeel, the concentration you
Yeah.
get from barrel aging
Hmm.
without the flavor. So yeah, I think it's a fun wine,
Yeah.
and it does because it's got that heavier mouthfeel. It really works well with lots of different foods.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people listening maybe are big wine folks and might know this, but for those who don't, I always think for somebody that likes the body of a Chardonnay but doesn't want a Chardonnay, that like a wine like this is a nice alternative because it's definitely not one of these light, zippy white, pool sipping. It's got more going on, but I think more nuanced flavors than at least a lot of Chardonnays. So it's great. And you make I know I've had quite a few times. I think it's called a Condriesque, which is a blend. I was gonna ask, I assume that is the Roussanne 100% Roussanne, and do we see that in
Yeah.
other of your blends?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we thank you for mentioning that. So we have our classic Rhone white blend. We call it Condriesque after
Yeah.
the famous Viognier region in France. And it's Viognier and Roussanne, fifty
Yeah.
fifty.
Nice.
And just funnily enough, this Roussanne was because that particular year we had way more Roussanne than we had Viognier. And so we
Oh,
said, do something special.
oh,
And
okay.
so I think it's delightful. It is reminiscent of the Condrias because
Yeah.
it's, half of what goes in there.
Yeah.
And but I do think the Condriesque is also, that is a fan favorite for sure.
Yeah. Can you speak to the extent to which you're like changing things up year to year versus because it sounds like from what you're saying in that case you're not I'm inferring that it's not just the same program every year, but um, I don't know what the range is and what factors have you pivot.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So, this is an agricultural product. So by definition, every single year is different. And
Right.
our winemaker, Brian, likes to say winemaking is thousands of small decisions every
Yeah.
day.
Right.
And so we do that. But I would also add, so Brian was a consultant for us for a few years and then joined us this past year full time, which is really
Okay.
exciting
Great. Yeah.
because he's super talented. He's worked with our vineyard for over 12 years. And so he really knows the style that comes off of it
Yeah.
relative to other places too, and how to
Mhm.
highlight that. And we're just on a quest to do that, to make the very best wine that we can from our site.
Yeah.
And we learn every season.
Yeah.
And I think every winemaking operation does that because every season is different. And we
Hmm.
just try to do the best that we can, whether it's fermenting or blending or barrel choices. And
Yeah.
um, that's exciting.
Great. Yeah, it keeps things interesting, I'm sure.
Yes,
Let
it does.
let let's
Yes, it
move
does.
on. Oops, I was gonna get the Roussanne again. Let's move on to the red that we've chosen for today. It's the Heritage Blend. If you're looking at home, it's the 2022. There you go. If you're looking, I meant if you're listening and not looking. So I'm gonna pour a little bit of that and tell us this is obviously a blend. What do we have going on here?
Well, wonderful. So our Heritage Blend is our flagship Bordeaux style blend. And
Hmm.
we call it Heritage in a nod to the old world because it's classic. We call it
Yeah.
Heritage because it's a nod to the fact that we're a family business
Hmm.
rooted in farming. And we call it Heritage because also we're creating heritage, right?
Hmm.
Every bottle is a time capsule. So, what does that mean in the bottle? We actually blend all five Bordeaux varieties. So you don't always find all five.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So that creates a lot of complexity. It's always a left bank Bordeaux blend. And for everyone, if you don't know what that means, in Bordeaux, they have a right bank and a left bank. The right bank is typically more Merlot or Cabernet Franc dominated, and the left
Hmm.
bank is more Cabernet Sauv
Hmm.
dominated. And that's what you have here.
Yeah.
And the blend is 34% Cabernet Sauvignon,
Hmm.
28% Cabernet Franc, 21% Merlot, 14% Malbec and a wee 3% Petit Verdot. A
Yeah.
petite,
Okay.
petite 3%.
Yeah. Do you,
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Well, I was gonna say for this blend, what we try to do is we choose our very best barrels.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that we do, we just finished it this year, around February, March timeframe. We taste every barrel from the previous vintage and we rank them one, two,
Okay.
and only ones go into the heritage blend.
Oh, okay. Nice. So it made the grapes in here made the cut. That's a good sign. All
They
right,
made
everyone.
the cut. They made the cut.
Excellent. It's oh, I know I was going to ask you, is it just I'm trying to Malbec, I sometimes forget. I was thinking of the five, and I think that I forget some. Is that uncommon to see in a blend, or maybe it is? And you see so many Malbec on its own. I didn't realize.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unique in Washington State,
Yeah,
mainly because most wineries are sourcing their grapes from many places. And so to just put 14% Malbec, they're committing to, at least a barrel, probably more for a blend.
yeah,
And, we're able to do that because we have it on our site. And so I think it depends on the size of the winery and the
mm,
access that they
yeah,
have to the grapes. But what I love about the Malbec is it really gives kind of this fruity sensation to the wine, even at 14%.
mm,
You get that kind of luxury from the Cabernet
yeah,
Sauvignon. I always feel that you get aromatics from the Cabernet Franc, and the Merlot is going to give you that luscious mid palate. And
hmm
then the Malbec is just the fruit, and the Petit Verdot is some structure in there,
yeah,
and whip it up.
yeah. It is. You can really in tasting this. I feel like get the advantages of what you get when you're bringing the strengths, I guess, or the unique characteristics of those different grapes, because um, I feel like a lot of Bordeaux styles are very cab driven, and that's kind of what you taste. And so this has, I'd say, more going on than a lot, especially a lot of American cab-based blends. Kind of was thinking it feels very harmonious, and even just I opened it maybe half an hour before our call. I'm sort of feeling like this is very drinkable right now, but either decanting or aging for a bit. I don't know how you think about this wine. Is it something you encourage people to age or drink when they when they get it, or something in between?
I always encourage people not to save their wine forever because
Hmm.
life is short.
Hmm.
But that said, I think this wine, you could keep it for 20 years easily.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is not only the kind of barrel aging and complexity, but it's got some freshness in it.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's owing to our site. And really, the freshness is what preserves it over time. It
Hmm.
allows it to age. And
Yeah.
so I think that it just will get more delightful over time.
Yeah. It's got a nice blend of the structure and the fruit. Definitely. I know I don't know if I've had this 2022, probably not, but I wish, I think I might get one or two in a shipment of this. And so if I maybe next time if I get two, I'll put one aside and like try to see how it evolves. But I don't tend to have that much. I tend to be on the life is short, let's not keep this around forever kind of mentality. So
Yeah. And I think that's winemaking has changed a lot in the
yeah.
past, call it 30, 40 years on that note, because it
Hmm.
used to be, oh, you need to age it for 10 years before you even drink it. And
Right.
now we really try to make it so that as soon as we release it, it's ready to go.
Yeah.
So, so I think that, but it is a lovely wine, and it's just a little treat. And I love nothing more with this wine than a lovely steak. And I had one that was so delicious. It was a tenderloin with
Ooh.
an herb crust. I
That
mean, it
sounds
was just
delicious.
to die for, actually,
Oh,
together.
that
Because the
sounds
savory
wonderful.
notes in the wine and the
Hmm.
beef, and it was really good.
Yeah, I
Really.
could see this picking up the herbal notes as well as obviously the beef, but that's great. You know, when we spoke a few years ago, I don't know what made me, something you said put me on to um, which something I wouldn't have thought of, which was to make a pasta. I did a lamb ragu for this, not an earlier vintage of it. It was very good. I try to break out of my box a little bit. I do sometimes start thinking it's, Italian food. I have to have Italian wine, and so that was that was a good nudge to try something different.
Well, and there's a lot of lamb in that area of France too. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we forget like that what grows together goes together,
Right.
I like to
Yep.
say.
Yep.
And that's Bordeaux is a very all the wine grape regions of Europe are really agricultural too.
Yeah.
And so they get, just wonderful stuff. And actually, what I also love with this is a tuna steak.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And I had one that was fabulous. So it was cooked a bit rare with
Hmm.
a parsley shallot sauce,
Yep.
and that was pretty delightful too.
Oh, that does sound good. That makes me think of, I was telling you before we started recording that I was just recently in Spain, and one day in Barcelona I got a nice tuna steak with Rioja, and that was
Uh,
wound up working out pretty nicely.
I
But
bet.
I don't know if I should tell you this. I am, as you know, I'm a pretty serious cook, but Friday is often my night as a night off from cooking. We tend to order pizza. I was actually thinking of trying this with some pizza. I do have another bottle to do a serious preparation.
You know, I love pizza with almost anything,
Yeah,
to be honest.
there you go.
So I don't know if you knew this, but we have an outdoor pizza oven at the winery.
Oh, maybe I have seen reference to that. Okay, cool.
And so I do think like, it goes delight. I've had pizza with literally every wine that we
Hmm.
have
Well, I
as a
guess
result.
you would.
And I think it's pretty hard to beat.
Okay.
Just and the reason is that this wine can stand up to a lot of different flavors.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. It's got enough of acidity to handle the tomato sauce and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the different, meats or even
Yeah.
vegetables um, go
Right.
really well.
Well, good.
So,
Well, I look
oh,
forward to it. And I do have a back. One reason I figured, like, I knew I was probably gonna cook tonight, and I was like, okay, I had a second bottle of the Heritage, so I'm like, okay, I'll do some serious cooking for the next bottle I open of this, but we'll just go pizza tonight.
I think everyone deserves a glass of wine on their night off for sure.
There you
So,
go. That's a good policy. Speaking of Tate, you mentioned that, visiting the winery and stuff like that. So tell us a little, so people come, they can get a pizza. Give us the details. How does your visiting program work? Give us some of those details, and open all year round or some
we
limited.
are we are open all year round, not necessarily with daily operating hours in months
Sure.
like January, but
Yeah.
literally every day of the year, barring maybe Christmas and New
Yeah.
Year's and Thanksgiving, by appointment.
Hmm.
We have kind of regular tasting hours Friday through Sunday. But again, we always have people on staff and are always happy to accommodate if people make appointments. And
Great.
then we also do, I mentioned that we have, we're right there with our vineyard and our winery. So we also have, for people who are really wine curious, we'll do
Hmm.
VIP visits where you can
Okay.
come and kind of our logo is a truck, so we say look under the hood,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
see what's happening at Dineen Vineyards
Oh, fun.
and just enjoy and get kind of a look see at how we craft the wines, which is fun.
Yeah, that sounds great. And if someone, obviously, if somebody's local, it sounds like they can visit pretty much any time of year. If someone were someone like me and saying, I want to do a wine trip and see, visit you and some other wineries in the region, is there a best time to do that or range of times that might be great?
Yeah, my preferred time is between May and October.
Yeah,
The reason being is there's more to see when you come. So, in the winter, our vines are dormant. It's still quite beautiful, but,
yeah,
it's a little cooler. You probably aren't wanting to walk around too much. But starting in May, we get, regularly days above 70. The vineyard is coming back to life with shoots and we're off to the races. And then
yeah,
cap it off with October is our peak harvest. So
yeah.
we've got tractors and pickers and processing at the
Busy
winery.
time.
It's super fun, you know, and big trucks too. So that's always
Oh, yeah.
interesting to watch just the logistics.
Yeah, I'll bet. That sounds great. Okay, so those are good tips for visiting. So if people have been enticed to try your wines, what were the different options? Maybe where they can buy it where you're distributed to buy at stores versus, I know, give the info on how to order
Yeah,
online and join the
absolutely. So
club.
we on online, we're a boutique winery. So if you really want the full selection of our wines, the best place is online.
Hmm.
And we ship to, I think, every state except for four or five.
Yep.
So most states we can ship to. So that's the best. Also, we are distributed in many states and we're working on growing our distribution. So hopefully coming to
Okay.
Massachusetts soon.
That would be great.
Um, and which is great. And normally, I always, just for full disclosure, I like to tell people merchants usually only take on one or two SKUs. So it's
Yeah.
always convenient to have it at the store around the corner. But that's why if you want to try variety, coming to the website is really the best.
Yeah. Okay. That makes
Um,
good sense.
yes. And also, I always like to say if call or chat with us on the website because we can make recommendations.
Great.
So we like to, make people happy and
That's a
lean into their preferences.
Yeah, and I know, and actually, it's a good segue to just say, I mean, obviously, if people haven't tried your wines, they might want to do that before joining the club. But your club, I think, has flexibility in that regard. You want to say a word about the club and
Oh
how that
yeah. So
works?
we use our club as a way to let people explore our vineyard. So one thing that's wonderful about our club is our members can choose all their wines.
Yeah,
So if you say I only want heritage, great. You only get
great.
heritage. If you want to have 6 or 12 different wines, you can have 6 or 12 different wines. So it's really, like I said, it's a great way to explore or lean into your favorites
Yeah,
and sometimes choice is a little bit daunting. So I always tell people we curate the selection and then you can go off piste if you want.
yeah.
Um, and we subsidize shipping as well, which is great. And
Hmm.
then the final thing is that we have back to visiting.
Hmm.
We do have a wide selection of events throughout the year, and so I
Yeah.
always encourage people if they're traveling, take a look at our website and see the different events because they tend to be like very hands-on,
Oh,
get
okay.
to the
Nice.
vineyard. So really, the feedback I get is that they're pretty unique.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and just to give you a flavor, coming up here at the end of March, we have our first big event of the season, which we call Adopt a Vine.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so folks come out and they have their name on a vine.
Oh,
We
nice.
we talk about how do you raise your vine throughout the season, and then we teach you to prune.
Oh, okay.
And you
Huh,
can even take home a
interesting.
little vine cutting so that you can have your vine offspring in your garden.
That is very fun. That is unique. I have not heard of an adoptive vine program I've talked to a lot of wineries and stuff. Oh, that's fun.
So, and it's fun. And then, we can take pictures of it throughout the season if you're
Yeah.
curious too.
Oh, that's a great idea. Well, there's a lot of fun to go along with the tasty wine. So, Dineen Family Vineyards is worth checking out. Definitely, if you can get there in person, it sounds like that has added benefits, but the website is very robust and gives you that, like you said, that selection. So that is great. I have one. We're almost done here, and well, it's not your dinner time out where you are, but here it's getting close to time to try this. This wine is great on its own, but I know these are food-friendly wines, and I'm starting to get hungry, so we'll start winding this down. But I always like to ask a final question, and I like experimenting with different pairings, and I think you do too. So tell us something that is a surprisingly good food and wine pairing that you have enjoyed that people might not think to do on their own unless they are listening to this podcast. Tell us something fun that people should try that you love as a food and wine pairing.
Oh my gosh. Well, back to events, we have a series of chef hosted dinners at the winery.
Yeah,
And last year we had the most amazing pairing with Blanche Blanc.
Grenache
And it
Blanc.
was
Okay.
a lime panna cotta. And
Wow.
normally you would be like, gosh, what am I going to put with lime and panna cotta and for
Hmm.
dessert? You know, you
Wow.
think
Yeah.
often at a wine dinner, people think chocolate and red wine.
Yeah. Right. Right.
It knocked my socks off. It was
Wow.
so fabulous. Just the creaminess of the panna
Yeah.
cotta with the wine, and Grenache Blanc in particular has this kind of citrusy, zesty flavor,
Yeah.
and it's just divine.
Wow. Okay. That sounds good. That wouldn't have been on my bingo card or whatever. That's a good one.
So, and I like desserts, so that works well too.
Hey, a lot of dessert lovers out there. So we appreciate that tip and all that you've shared about Dineen Family Vineyards, Marissa. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure, David. Enjoy the pizza and wine and report back on the
I
pairing.
definitely will. I definitely will.
Great. Love it. That's a
All right.
postscript to the podcast.
Exactly. Stay tuned. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Cooking Chat Food and Wine Podcast. Check out the show notes at cookingchatfood.com/podcast and be sure to rate and subscribe to Cooking Chat wherever you get your podcasts.